Welcome in, guys. It's Friday yet again. And not only is it a normal Friday, it is the Friday before week 17 and your fantasy football championship. So, everything that we've been working for, this is the pinnacle and the culmination of everything that we've done all season long. But you know what show you're watching. This is Britt's Blitz. I am your host, Britt Flinn. We're on at a special time today because Coop and I decided to do a little flippy flop. So he'll be on right after me if you're looking for Coop's Fantasy Fiasco. But hey, if you found me, stick around, stay. I hope you hang out and like what you're seeing. When you're in the chat, make sure to like and subscribe because I know that football season's almost over, but we've got a ton of stuff going on for NBA, for college basketball. MLB is right around the corner, and we'll be releasing our MLB draft guide. So make sure to like and subscribe and hang around for all that content. Thank you so much to my producer, Tony LaBarbara. It's been wonderful working with you, and I love these graphics. And just thank you for everything you do. Rex in the chat, good afternoon to you as well. Super excited to have you here. Today, we're going to do the normal thing pretty much like we always do. We're going to jump in with a Thursday night football recap, do our stardom sit-ems. We are going to do the sleeper picks before because I do want plenty of time to dedicate the final segment to all of your bold predictions and discussing your start sit questions. So if you have any start sits, make sure that you throw them in the chat. We'll get them answered. But let's just go ahead and jump right into Thursday night football between the Jets and the Browns because I was having a dilemma with this game. I lost Justin Herbert and my backup was Jared Goff. So I picked up Joe Flacco. And I was really trying to decide, well, who do I start? Because Goff is going against Dallas. He doesn't exactly perform well on the road. I also have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. So if the Lions completely just lay an egg, then I'm pretty much screwed. So I was trying to debate whether or not to start Joe Flacco. And I was looking at the over-unders. I was looking at the passing yardage props and looking at just the stats overall from the Jets defense. And I was like, I don't think that I can start him. He ah, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was horrible. Watching him score all of those touchdowns, both teams came out swinging. So it was so much for a defensive struggle against those two teams. The Browns hit the over under pretty much in the first half, and it was a big game for Jerome Ford. It also, and Jared brings this up in the chat, shout out to the ones who started David Njoku. It felt like we were going to get Amari Cooper by David Njoku after that first drive and all of those big plays that he had. He was so close to scoring that anytime touchdown and completing everything that I had for sleeper, but I digress. You can't always get what you want, right? But he was very quiet in the second half, so his steam kind of cooled off a little bit. I don't know if you guys saw the video of him jumping into the stands, picking up a leftover beer and shaking it and then just drinking it. He did not care. He was celebrating with somebody else's backwash. That's how excited David Njoku was for winning this game. It was the most points that the Jets have given up all season, so rightly so. They just got torched. So going with Joe Flacco, he had 296 yards in the first half alone. Obviously, in the second half, they backed off a little bit. So he finished 19 of 29, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. It was just absolutely insane. I also have another video of him that the NFL posted. It's on their TikTok, it's on their Twitter or X, but he's sitting on the bench on the sideline and he is doing this, like just shutting his eyes and then kind of nodding off. Like this guy, I don't know how he's been sitting on the couch taking care of his kids and then comes out over the past 4 weeks and throws for this many yards just off of his couch when it's past his bedtime, y'all. It was definitely past his bedtime, but he still got out there and did it. Another big play guy yesterday, Jerome Ford, 12 rushes for 64 yards and 2 receptions for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely insane what he was able to do on the ground. And then, as Jared mentioned in the chat, David Njoku, 6 receptions, 134 yards. This guy has been kind of harped upon so often for his inability to get yards after the catch, but I think we're putting that narrative to rest after what he did last night. Elijah Moore also had a bit of a revenge game, going 5 for 51 and 1 touchdown. However, he did spend the night in the hospital after a really scary hit and is now officially in concussion protocol. So prayers up to him. Glad that he's home and resting safe because that hit and that reaction, that fencing response of the involuntary movement after was pretty scary, and definitely glad to see that he's okay. Finally, Cleveland's defense. I started Cleveland's defense, and I'm so happy that I did because they had 2 sacks, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery, 1 touchdown, and 1 blocked kick. So, absolutely incredible there. For the Jets side, it wasn't horrible. When you look at what the score was, Simeon was 32 of 45, 261, only 1 touchdown and 1 interception, however. Brees Hall, 13 rushes for 84 yards, but then 9 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. If you started him, I saw on Sleeper that 8% of people didn't start him. Um, Congratulations if you started him. On the other side, Garrett Wilson, only 5 for 50, no touchdowns, no big plays. And then Tyler Conklin, 5 for 45 to wrap things up around the Jets. So, all in all, a pretty exciting Thursday night game, something that we love to see. Joe Flacco's odds now of becoming comeback player of the year are only second to DeMar Hamlin, and they are at plus 100. So, I think that Flacco, with his performance, is making a big uh, petition for him to be comeback player of the year. Sellers, I see you in the chat. Happy anniversary to you too, as well. So glad that you're here, even when you're not here. So hitting on some top news. Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase is at it again with his sassiness. He was asked about what stands out about the Chiefs secondary, and he responded, "If I'm being honest, nothing. Guys, what are we doing giving bulletin board material to the Kansas City Chiefs? We've seen that they have done this in the past, especially with the Bengals in particular, calling Arrowhead Burrowhead last year, that they came out swinging. Now you're giving them more bulletin board material before this must-win game on Sunday. Just Chase, what are you doing? You might not even be playing. Just quit giving them things to rile up their team and make them angry. Um, it's insane to me. So as always, we hit a bunch of injury news. There is lots of it, so we're going to try to go through this fast so we can get in on everybody. And I don't think anything else new has come in. I say that as there are 7 notifications on my phone, but I hope that this is the most accurate and up-to-date information. So for the Cardinals, unfortunately, wide receiver Marquise Brown has been placed on IR and will miss the rest of the season. Kyler Murray didn't practice yesterday, but it was due to an illness. He was back on the field today, and he should be good to go for Sunday. So if you're looking at starting Kyler Murray, good news on that front there. For the Falcons, Taylor Heineke was limited with an ankle injury Thursday. I don't really think anybody's starting Taylor Heineke this week, but it could affect, the Kyle Pitts, the Drake Londons, if you are starting either of them. So just be aware of that, especially against a very impressively tough Bears defense that has really improved over the second half of the season. For the Baltimore Ravens, wide receiver Zay Flowers didn't practice Thursday. Not really sure what's going on with him, if this is precautionary, if he's going to suit up. But if they are without him, it's going to be a pretty big deal going up against the Dolphins, even though the Dolphins are banged up themselves, which we'll get to. And Ann, I see you in the chat. What's up, girl? Good to see you. For the Carolina Panthers, Chuba Hubbard was limited with a hamstring injury Thursday. We kind of saw his efficiency go way, way down on Sunday, and I wonder if it was because he injured his hamstring, but we're waiting to hear more about him today. For the aforementioned Chicago Bears, tight end Cole Kmet did not practice Thursday, unfortunately. That's opening up the pathway for lots and lots of targets to DJ Moore. Jamar Chase did return to practice Thursday, and he was seen with his jersey on today, although it was limited. But the latest news that I have heard is that they don't really expect him to go. They don't want to push it with that separated shoulder. So I would honestly be surprised to see him out on the field for this week. Broncos wide receiver Cortland Sutton also remains in concussion protocol. Fellow wide receiver Marvin Mims was limited. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but with Jarrett Stidham starting, I don't know how much I trust Sutton, even if he does clear concussion protocol. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers and their injury saga. So Luke Musgrave returned to practice, which was good, but wide receiver Christian Watson did not practice. Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks were limited, and both running backs Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon were also limited. So they've just been dealing with injuries all over the place all year long. Yesterday, it came out that Jair Alexander has been suspended for one game because of conduct detrimental to the team because he decided to crash a coin toss for some reason. So it's just a very rough spot for the Packers going up against the Vikings on Sunday night. And as a side note, can we talk about why the NFL is not flexing the Dolphins Ravens into Sunday night and leaving us with Packers Vikings with nothing to play for? Just if anybody has any insight, let me know in the chat. So moving on to the Texans, wide receivers Noah Brown and Nico Collins remain questionable, but Collins did get in a full practice. CJ Stroud is cleared from concussion protocol and is ready to go, which is great news going up against the Titans and their defense. Good news for the Colts, as Jared mentions in the chat, Michael Pittman cleared concussion protocol and is on track to play Sunday against the Raiders. Zach Moss, however, is still limited. So if you're looking at Jonathan Taylor, it's even a more clear path to touches for him. Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence didn't practice Thursday. It makes it really tough if he doesn't practice today. Still waiting to hear their practice reports. But if he didn't practice Wednesday or yesterday, I'm hard pressed to think that he's going to play. But you never know. He's kind of been this Superman Wolverine type that's just come on and been able to get back on the field after every single injury that he's suffered. Wide receiver Zay Jones was also listed as limited. For the Kansas City Chiefs, running back Isaiah Pacheco didn't practice Thursday, along with CEH, which is something to monitor. However, CEH's non-practice was due to illness, so he should be able to play. Also, no Kadarius Toney, but I don't think anyone's relying on him at this point if you're in the fantasy championships. For the Raiders, Josh Jacobs is still not practicing, and that is puzzling to me because he was supposedly a game time decision. They wanted him to play on Monday. They said that he could have played on Monday, and he went right up until game time, and they said, well, he's just not 100% there yet. If he was going to be there on Monday, how is he still not practicing today? Excuse me. Just really puzzling things there for Josh Jacobs. For the Los Angeles Chargers, no Keenan Allen and no Joshua Palmer at the Chargers practice on Thursday. They were there. They were working off to the side, but they did not actually practice with the team. Keenan Allen has missed the past 2 games with injury. Palmer, missed a couple of games before that, being on injured reserve. Not good news for the Chargers if they are missing both of their top receivers. So as we mentioned on the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane were listed as limited on Thursday, with Raheem Mostert still sidelined. Mostert and Achane are expected to play through. I think Tyreek Hill is as well. However, Jalen Waddle was officially ruled out about an hour before this show started. So if you've got Jalen Waddle, going to need to look on that waiver wire for a replacement or hope that you have some depth on your bench for him. Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison and Alexander Madison were back at practice in a limited fashion on Thursday, although the beat reporters said that Addison reportedly appeared slow. So doesn't look good for him. I'm not exactly confident in starting him anyway, as it stands with Jaren Hall coming in at quarterback. We just don't know what we're getting from him. The limited reps that we did see from him before he got concussed and replaced with Joshua Dobbs did not look that great earlier in the year. So I'd be hesitant about starting him anyway. And I think it does knock down Justin Jefferson. Not a ton, but definitely not a little, if that makes sense. Patriots running back Ezekiel Elliott is dealing with an illness and didn't practice. Hunter Henry was limited with Juju Smith-Schuster absent. For the New Orleans Saints, wide receiver Chris Olave was limited with an ankle injury that he's been dealing with. The Pittsburgh Steelers listed Najee Harris limited with a knee injury Thursday. The 49ers have Deebo Samuel limited due to a neck injury he suffered in Monday night's loss. I don't know how serious it is. If he's limited, hopefully they're just taking it easy on him, especially since they have the Commanders. But I would be watching for his status because I don't necessarily know how much these pass catchers are going to get anyway, with as much as San Francisco is favored over Washington. So you might want to look elsewhere just in case. Wrapping it up here, Seattle's running back Kenneth Walker didn't practice Thursday due to a shoulder injury, but he's also been dealing with an illness. So I feel like it's a little bit more illness related than it is shoulder related. And for the Commanders, Brian Robinson Jr. returned to practice for the Commanders in a limited fashion yesterday. So that wraps up our injury news. Again, if you guys have any questions about your week 17 matchup, please throw them in the chat. This is what we're here for. This is what we've been working for the entire season long, was to get us to this pinnacle. And we don't want to drop the ball from the top. That's just the worst feeling, because then you got to climb back all the way down to get it. So if you've got any questions, throw them in the chat. But I also want to know if you guys have tried the BetterCast app yet. And I know that a lot of you guys in the chat have already been in there. But for those of you who don't know, we are gamifying NFL Game Day on the BetterCast app. You can join our free-to-play contest during NFL games this Saturday and Sunday, predict what will happen, make picks, and test your NFL knowledge. You can chat with our community about the big plays, top performers, and busts in real time. And when you watch the games with us and answer those questions correctly, if you win tickets that you can redeem for real, authentic NFL merchandise. We've also got this going on for bowl games, for NBA. There is something for everybody in the BetterCast app. So scan that QR code or go to your Apple app or Google Play stores to download it for free today. And I mentioned the Fantasy Alarm All Pro subscription with my matchup previews. Those are part of it. All of our DFS content is part of it. Every single sport, every single tool, our access to our Discord, every single thing that we have to offer on our site is included as part of that All Pro package. So go to fantasyalarm.com/win to sign up today. Use promo code Let's Go for 50% off your first monthly payment. And baseball, as I mentioned, is coming up. So, out of football, right back into baseball. It never sleeps around here. So scan that QR code on the screen or go to fantasyalarm.com/win to sign up today. And then Anne's got a question in the chat here real quick, and then we'll take a short break so that I can get some water and clear my throat, because it is also that time of year as well. Anne says, need 2 in PPR. Ty Chandler, Brandon Cooks, Curtis Samuel, Dubs, Goddard, no tight end premium. So with Madison even being limited, I think that Chandler has surpassed him and jumped him in the depth chart. So I really like Chandler over or against the Packers. I think honestly, I like Goddard. I like Goddard a lot this week too, going up against the Cardinals. I know it's not tight end premium, but the way that the Cardinals have been able or have been giving up points to the tight end, we saw it with Cole Kmet last week. We've seen it all season long. I really do like Dallas Goddard this week. So I think he would be your move, even over any of those other 3 receivers. So yeah, good luck. I hope that you can bring home the championship, Ann. And Kyle's in the chat. What's up, Kyle? Kyler Murray over Mayfield, Carr, and Minshew. Actually, it's pretty close between Murray and Mayfield, but against the Eagles defense, I would give the edge to Murray just slightly. Also do like Derek Carr a whole lot, but he's been very up and down, hit or miss. I think if you've got a guy like Kyler Murray who has that rushing upside, who has definitely built a rapport with Trey McBride, and going against that Eagles defense that absolutely cannot stop the pass, that's who you roll with here, and in a negative game script as well. So Tyson in the chat, good to see you, Tyson. Dynasty question, Superflex PPR, and I'm in my finals. Running backs are Kieran Williams, Ford, Khalil Herbert. Bench Ford and hope Jacobs would play, but if he doesn't, I have to play Herbert. Trades are still open. Do I trade my third and next year's second for James Conner? I don't think that I would do that, because Conner has a really tough matchup against the Eagles, whereas I just talked about Kyler Murray having a very good matchup. It's the opposite for James Conner. Do not like going against that Eagles defense. Do not like that point spread. I don't think that Arizona is going to run the ball really at all, because they should be playing from behind most of the game. And I know that it is dynasty, but I just don't think that Connor is worth that much. He is getting older. He hasn't played a full season in his entire career. I think I would just wait. So that's my 2 cents. Jelly of the month, PPR, wait on Jamar on Sunday with a Javonte Williams pivot or go David Montgomery versus Dallas on Saturday. This is coming from me as a Dallas fan, and I hate that I'm saying this. I think that the Lions are going to run all over Dallas. Jonathan Hankins has already been ruled out. We've seen what teams have been able to do with him out, a la James Cook. It just looks horrific for him. I think that I would actually start David Montgomery, even splitting with Jameer Gibbs. I don't really trust Chase. And even if Chase is able to go, then he's got that tough matchup against the Kansas City secondary, which in his mind is not impressive, but we know that they are. So I think I would go Montgomery. Shane in the chat. Hello, Shane. Flex options, half PPR, T. Higgins, Demarcus Robinson, Darren Waller, Tyler Lockett, Addison, Brian Robinson. Ooh. So this one's a little bit tough. I'm honestly leaning Demarcus Robinson. I really like what he's been doing over the past few weeks. He's scored a touchdown in the past 4 weeks straight. Um, they're not just using Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup. They're incorporating all three. I think I'm going to go with, yeah, I'm going to go with Demarcus Robinson here. And good luck. And go Hogs. Yes, you saw the ball. So George is in the chat. Need 3 running backs to start and half PPR. Aaron Jones, ETN, Zamir White, CEH, Ty Chandler, and Javonte Williams. Way too many options. That's a testament to great drafting, though. If you have that many options, that means that you did your job. Right now, I think that I'm looking at ETN for sure. And then I think I really like CEH against the Bengals. Their run defense has been pretty putrid, and they did also lose another defensive lineman a few weeks ago with Jerick McKinnon on injured reserve. And with Pacheco still not playing with that concussion, this backfield belongs to him. Inefficiency be damned. If he gets that many carries, if he gets those targets, I think that this is where we land. So that Aaron Jones or ETN and CEH for me. Then Anne, sorry, I keep losing my cursor, so it keeps jumping down. Anne says, I've got DK Metcalf and Addison in my lineup. If neither go, who are subs? PPR with tight end premium, Mooney, Chark, Hunter Henry, and Kincaid. So I really do like DJ Chark this week. I'll talk about him a little bit later, so stay tuned for that. And then I think Hunter Henry if he goes, but Mooney's also banged up. So Mooney and Henry are both limited, so I don't know if you can trust either one of those. Definitely DJ Chark and Hunter Henry, especially with the tight end premium here. So Jack's in the chat. Sat Ford and more last night for Nico Collins and Noah Brown. With Stroud starting, will I come close to the production I missed last night? I think that you can, honestly. I really do love Stroud. I think that Tennessee's defense is definitely not great. I don't know if it's going to be 100% the production we saw last night, but I think that it will be close. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Then Jesterville, Standard League. Running backs are Kieran Williams, James Cook, DeAndre Swift. Wide receivers are Jefferson, Tyreek, and Cup. Need 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a flex. So you're definitely starting Kieran, definitely starting James Cook, definitely starting Jefferson and Tyreek. I think I'm going to go with Cup here, actually. DeAndre Swift in a standard continuously gets his touchdowns vultured by Jalen Hurts and that tush push. At least Cup does have a little bit of a chance to score in the end zone. We saw him drop 2 passes in the end zone last week. So I think he's your guy for the flex. Ann asks, how does Russ's benching affect Javonte, or does it? I mean, it does. I feel like it affects every part of the offense. What also affects Javonte is that, he's still splitting carries with Jaleel McLaughlin. I don't know why. I don't really like the spot that he's been put in. I don't, yeah. There's It's not great. I think that Javonte is the best option on that team, but I don't think that the team looks very good right now, if that makes sense. So then George says, I need a third back if you don't mind. Was going to flex that as well. Um, Sorry, I cannot read. Ty Chandler for my flex. My bad on that. Sorry. All right. So let's jump into our stardom situms. We'll continue to answer questions in the chat, but we've got to knock out these segments too. So let's continue our accountability check and talk about some hits and misses from week 16. And a hit was definitely to start David Njoku last week. Yes, it wasn't the Amari Cooper complete blow up game, but he still had a touchdown, still had a decent day. In tight end land, this is absolutely everything that you want. Another hit was to sit Terry McLaurin. We all knew how that turned out. Um, Although the Commanders did almost come back against the Jets, it was not great production for McLaurin. And then, of course, another hit was in that same game to sit Sam Howell versus the Jets. And not only did we sit him, he got sat himself. So that was a hit on multiple levels. A miss was to start Chuba Hubbard. He just didn't look efficient. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know if that's because he injured his hamstring or because what's going on, but he just didn't have that same production out of all those carries that we were expecting. And another miss was to sit Austin Eckler. It wasn't great. He still ended up as RB24 in PPR league, so I guess that's fine. It's just not what you want out of Austin Eckler. But since he did get double-digit points, I will count that against myself as a miss. So, and as always, if you guys are new here, this is just a suggestion in case you have another viable option. I really don't want you guys to go out there and pick up a scrub on the waiver wire just to replace one of these guys if you don't have anyone else to start. It's just if you're trying to decide between them and somebody else. So, jumping in first for my stardom is CJ Stroud versus the Tennessee Titans. He did miss the first meeting against the Titans this season due to a concussion, but he should be ready to go after clearing concussion protocol this week. And look, this guy has such a massively high ceiling and is one of the most consistent quarterbacks in fantasy football. The Titans, on the flip side, ranked 25th in pass DVOA, and with Nico Collins back in the mix, he should be able to attack early. The Texans also have to win this game as they're sitting on the bubble right now in the playoff picture. So I think the play calling is aggressive and leads to plenty of throws from CJ Stroud. For my running back, I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott. And no, it's not because of my Cowboys bias that Howard Bender likes to joke with me about. This is because this has become Zeke's backfield. With Ramondre Stevenson officially on IR, this backfield does belong to Zeke. In the last 3 weeks, he's the RB6 in PPR leagues and is fully back into that RB1 territory. And this is largely due to his usage in the passing game with Bailey Zappi. He's had 25 targets over the past 3 games, and this matchup against the Bills is so good. They're allowing 5.4 receptions to the running back position this year, along with 4.6 yards per attempt. So that combination of carries and receiving work should put him in line for another really big week. My second running back is Travis Etienne versus the Panthers. And with Trevor Lawrence banged up and uncertain to start, I think that the Jaguars actually do go really run heavy. And fortunately for them, they could not ask for a better matchup than the one this week against the Panthers. Carolina ranks dead last in rush DVOA, and they gave up 162 rushing yards to a somewhat hobbled Packers running back room, including 127 yards to Aaron Jones. So with ETN, much like Zeke, this combination of rushing plus receiving upside really can't be understated this week. So for my wide receivers, I'm going to go with Mike Evans versus the Saints. And I know what people are saying. Oh, Mike Evans doesn't do well against the Saints. Well, for the first time in what feels like ever, Evans gets to face a Saints team without Marshawn Lattimore and that legendary beef that these two players have. This is putting him in line for a huge week against a Saints defense that gave up 298 yards to wide receivers alone last week against the Rams. So really love Mike Evans this week. And for my other wide receiver, I'm going to stick with this matchup and just switch sides and go with Chris Olave. He is coming off a massive game, but I promise you guys, I'm not just point chasing here. He's got a really good matchup against the Bucs. because they have given up the fourth most fantasy points to wide receivers and are allowing the most passing yards per game. Olave has also had over 100 receiving yards in 3 of his last 4 games, and had he not gone out for injury in week 14, it honestly could be 4 in a row. He's explosive, he's getting targets, and these targets aren't just dink and dunk targets. He's going downfield, and he actually ranks second among wide receivers in the league in deep throws. So, with the Saints also in a must-win game, I love this situation for him. For my tight end to round out our week 17 stardoms, I'm going to go with Isaiah Likely versus the Miami Dolphins. And, Likely had a bit of a rough week against the 49ers last week, but their defense is very, very good against the tight end. He's not going to find himself locked down like he was on Monday Night Football. And the Dolphins kind of have been susceptible to the tight end production based on DVOA. And they're much better against outside wide receivers than they get credit for, especially with Jalen Ramsey back in the mix. So I think that these targets that have been going to Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham Jr. on the outside kind of get funneled inward towards Likely. And, while he hasn't been that huge target monster, he's still putting up solid numbers with the targets he's seen and has 2 touchdowns over the past 4 weeks. So I really like this spot for Isaiah Likely. Now, moving on to the situms. And admittedly, after practice today, this one may or may not solve itself, but I have to go with Trevor Lawrence. Besides being beaten up, even if he does start, I'm really worried about Trevor Lawrence in this matchup in general, because not only are the Panthers good against the pass, only giving up 175 passing yards per game, they've also given up the fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position, largely due in part to the ease at which opposing teams can run on them. But now that you factor in Lawrence being banged up, I think that just adds to the necessity of running. If he starts, I don't think that you can trust him staying in the entire game, because he's been pulled early in the last 3 or so games because he sprained his ankle, then he got a concussion, then he sprained his AC joint. It's just injury after injury after injury, and we don't want to call people injury prone, but we also don't want to play injured players. And that's where we're stuck at right now with Trevor Lawrence. The ceiling just isn't there for him. For the running backs, unfortunately, I am going with Chuba Hubbard. I love him. I think that his carries and his workload have been great, but he's got a difficult matchup here against the Jaguars' run defense. They rank 6th in rush DVOA and have only given up 101 rush yards per game and just 4 rush yards per attempt. And after last week's performance, I'm not sure how much they're going to run the ball, because even against Green Bay's sieve of a run defense, he only got 43 yards on 16 attempts and had 1 reception for 8 yards. I think that this game goes through Adam Thielen and DJ Chark as long as Bryce Young can get the ball off to them. And Hubbard just doesn't have much upside in this defense. So, not very comfortable playing him. Another running back, and this might surprise you guys, but is Devon Achane against the Ravens. And I've been a little worried about Achane for a few weeks now, as it kind of looks like the shine may have worn off of the rookie. But he's also been dealing with injury, and he wasn't able to get it done last week against a Dallas defense that was without Jonathan Hankins. He's only the RB35 over the last 3 weeks, and now he gets a matchup against the Ravens defense that is 10th in rush DVOA and has given up the 6th most fantasy points to the position. I also don't see a lot of rushing in this game, period. And as someone who has to start Raheem Mostert, I'm not feeling great about that either. The run game in general in Miami, I'm a little bit worried about, but Achane specifically. Now, for the wide receivers, I'm looking at Deontay Johnson versus the Seahawks. With Mason Rudolph in for Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, Johnson was on a milk carton. He had 2 catches for 15 yards, being completely, majorly, totally, solarly eclipsed by George Pickens and his 195 yards. Now, y'all know I'm not one to follow what happened last week and have a knee-jerk reaction, but I just don't like this matchup on the road against the Seahawks either. They rank 12th in DVOA against the wide receiver 1, as opposed to 32nd in DVOA against the wide receiver 2. So I think that it could be another Pickens game. And it's definitely not that I don't like Johnson, but if he's not getting the targets, his ceiling is just kind of capped. And then another one that may sort itself out is, of course, Cortland Sutton. And admittedly, if he's unable to go due to concussion, then we don't have to worry about it. But I'm still including him on the list because I've had conversations about potentially outright dropping him with Jarrett Stidham in at quarterback. And sure, I mean, Stidham did fine in relief of Derek Carr last season, but I haven't seen him in the system. And from what it looked like last week, the ball is just spread around entirely too much for us to really count on one person in that offense. And with that unknown, especially in the fantasy championship, I don't feel comfortable going that route. My tight end here is Dalton Kincaid versus the Patriots. So I told Ann we would come back around and talk about Kincaid a little bit. But since Dawson Knox returned to the lineup, Kincaid just hasn't been what he was. I mean, he's only had 4 combined targets the last 2 games. He's caught 1 of them for 7 yards. I cannot get behind this. He's also been dealing with injuries to his thumb and his shoulder, and he gets the Patriots, who have actually been really good against the tight end. They rank 12th in DVOA and have allowed the second fewest points to the tight end, and I just can't trust him. I think that there are better options out there for you when it comes to the tight end position. So that wraps up our stardom sit-em. Before I jump into our DFS sneaky cheapies, I want to get back to the chat because I see quite a few questions rolling in here. So Patty, pick one PPR. Aaron Jones, Zeke, or Connor. So I'm going to go Zeke here. I think that rushing plus receiving upside gives him such a high ceiling. The Bills, as good as their passing defense has been, they've kind of lacked in run defense. And I think that Zeke gets it done again this week, especially if he's seeing the number of targets that he's seen. I mean, 25 over the past 3 weeks is chef's kiss. Jelly of the month, great to see you. My 6-point passing touchdown is Baker versus New Orleans, Carr versus Tampa Bay, and Love versus Minnesota on the wire. Go Baker or switch. This one is very, very tough for me because as much as I love Derek Carr, I think I'm going to have to stick with Baker. I have a huge feeling that Mike Evans is going to have a big game, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. I like Carr, but I think that with Chris Godwin emerging, with Mike Evans just being dominant, I think that you've got to go with Baker. Albert in the chat, hello to you as well. Rex benched Flacco for Mullins. Mullins is now being benched for Hall. I have Young on the bench. Should I start him or go pick up Hall to start? Young. Got to go Young here. I don't trust Hall. Hall's missing TJ Hawkinson, likely missing Jordan Addison. It's definitely in a better situation. But I kind of liked what I saw from Young last week, spreading the ball around a little bit. So I think I would go Young. I would go with the, quote, more talented rookie of the bunch. And then George asks, do I like the Bills or Raiders defense better this week? Honestly, I like the Raiders. I love what the Raiders have been doing. They've only allowed 12.7 points on average over the past 3 games. They're also forcing turnovers. They're getting defensive touchdowns. Love everything about the Raiders this week. Even with Michael Pittman coming back, Gardner Minshew tends to get a little fast and loose with the ball sometimes. And I think that is going to result in a pick 6 or 2. And then Angie in the chat, hello to you as well. Do I like Rams, Jags, or Denver this week? So I am starting the Rams in my one league, but that is because the Jags were unavailable. I think given the choice, I am starting the Jaguars this week. So let's take a quick break because I've got to get some water. But we'll come back. We'll do our sneaky cheapies. We'll do our sleeper picks and our bold predictions and continue to answer all your questions in the chat. So stay tuned, and we will be right back in just a couple of minutes.
Oh, boy, we got a big one. We got a big card here.
Let's go.
We got a super rookie.
Ooh.
Do you guys want to guess who the big card super rookie is? Because
I'm going to guess
exciting.
somebody from the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't recall who were rookies in those particular years. So I'm going to guess Michael Irvin.
Adam?
Jared kind of convinced me to go Troy Aikman there.
I'm going to read the description. In this player's NFL debut, September 10th, 1989, he produced an electrifying 68-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Sanders.
He became the first athlete in the 20th century to hit a home run September 5th, 1989 for the Yankees at Seattle and score a touchdown in the same week.
That needs a sleeve. That one needs a sleeve.
Top
100%.
super rookie, neon, prime time, Deion Sanders.
I wasn't that far off. He played for the Cowboys.
I was going to say Deion, and then when you said the early 90s Cowboys, I'm like, oh, Aikman would be a good guess. So I go with your gut is the lesson there.
And there it is, the white and red Falcon jerseys that you said Deion came in with before they changed to black.
That was because the starting lineup for Deion his rookie year has got the red helmet with the white jersey.
Now look at that do. I mean, are you kidding me with that hair?
I mean, you got to have a headband with those curls. You got to.
That is sick. And this is a favorite card. Do we have any value on this card? We have to, right?
Let me see.
Give me a value here.
Let's see here on eBay. PSA 10 gem mint Deion Sanders, $149.99. And then a 9.5 is $6. So that guy might be a little bit then there's a much more reasonably listed one at $31 for a PSA 10. So it's got some value to it. Yeah, you might want to protect that one.
It's in excellent condition. I guess we have to worry about, is it centered?
Yes, that would be the next thing.
All right, well, we'll go through the process there. Maybe I'll just frame that one as a great moment in this show's history.
Welcome back in, guys. Thanks for letting me take a break, get some water, and for you guys to throw a couple more questions in the chat here. Angelo says, I'd like to have Tom Brady's card when he was in Montreal Expo. That would be pretty amazing. And then Paul, shout out from Texarkana, Arkansas. Shout out to you, Paul. Should I start Purdy or Stafford? So for me here, I think I'm going to go Brock Purdy. It's very close for me. I'm a little bit worried about that stinger, but I think that they are mad and that he has a point to prove. And going up against the Commanders is just a chef's kiss. I think with the Rams, and this is true of both teams, but I think that the Rams are going to be a little more conservative and utilize some Kieran Williams. So I'm going to go Purdy. I think that he has a bounce back week. Although I do like Stafford. They are neck and neck for me. And as far as the wide receivers, need 2 wide receivers. Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Puka, Mike Evans, or Rashee Rice. Oh my gosh, just 2 out of those? That is super difficult because that is great drafting and great waiver wiring and trading, whatever you've done. I think definitely Mike Evans, we're starting against the Saints, as we mentioned. And man, this is so hard for me. I think we've got to go Puka. We've got to go Puka. I know it's start your studs mentality and all that, but Jefferson with Hall, don't think that I like him more than those 2. A.J. Brown, I think that the Eagles just kind of run the ball the entire time. And then Rice, I wish that you could find a way to get Rice in there. It's been, man, this is tough. But Puka and Mike Evans for me. Final answer. And then Kyle says, did you say earlier that I don't like Javonte this week despite the matchups? Yeah, I don't like it that much because he's been splitting snaps with Jaleel McLaughlin. And I feel like with Stidham at quarterback that they're just not going to respect the pass as much, and they're going to kind of stack the box. It doesn't mean don't play him if you don't have another option, anything like that. I just don't like him as much as I typically do. So let's jump into some of these sneaky cheapies real quick for DFS. And let me just tell you, my ones from week 16, I do not want to talk about. It was Joe Flacco, who was great. That was fine. But then it was Roschon Johnson, Curtis Samuel, and Kate Otten. So no, not talking about it. We're moving on to this week. My quarterback, we're just going to run through this real quick. Derek Carr versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Back-to-back games of 3 touchdowns. He had over 300 yards in last week's loss against the Rams. The Bucs have allowed the most passing yards per game this season, along with the 8th most fantasy points per game to the quarterback. So I think that he's in a great spot, especially with the Saints in a must-win. My running back is Kenny Gainwell. And let me just say I want to preface this by saying that the cheap options for running back are few and far between, and I don't really like any of them. So I don't think that this is really the week to pay down at running back, But that said, I think that Gainwell has a decent chance to produce this week. He had double-digit fantasy points last week against the Giants, and I do think that he does get more than the usual numbers, and then Coop in the chat, the usual number of carries if they get out ahead. This is purely speculation, but as far as a dart throw, I like him. Now for wide receiver, I'm going to go with DJ Chark versus the Jaguars, and we're totally not point chasing here, but the target share that Chark saw last week was absolutely incredible. 8 targets, 98 yards, and it's amazing how well that it works when you spread your ball around to your experienced players. The Jaguars have also allowed the 8th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, and in a negative game script situation, expect plenty of targets and passing from Bryce Young. To round things out here at tight end, I'm going to go with Chig Okonkwo versus the Texans. And much like running back, I don't really like a lot of these cheap options at tight end this week. But if I had to, I'm going to go with Chig because the Texans defense has given up the 6th most fantasy points to the tight end position. And this may be purely a gut call, but I think with DeAndre Hopkins getting a more difficult matchup with the Texans secondary, that Will Levis looks a little bit more towards Chig Okonkwo. So there are my sneaky cheapies. And yes, Coop in the chat, I know that you're starting Carr in a championship, but his salary is only $5,500. So we've got to go with him, right? And then Angie in non-PPR, assuming Addison sits, left with Noah Brown or Demarcus Robinson. I think we're going Noah Brown here, just by a smidge. They're very close for me. Yeah, I like Brown being the 2nd wide receiver as opposed to the 3rd, as good as Robinson's been. But with that said, continue to throw your questions in the chat, but let's move on to our favorite sleeper picks of the week. And you guys know that we've had a partner here on Britt's Fantasy Blitz for a while, and you guys all know them and you love them, and it is the Sleeper app. So sign up today at fantasyalarm.com/sleeper. Use promo code VAULT3 for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Now, I've got my articles over at fantasyalarm.com for you guys, but let's go through a couple of these picks. And if you scan that QR code, use promo code VAULT3 again for a 100% deposit match up to $100. So we had a pretty good day on Sunday. I think we went 4 out of 5 with our picks from last Friday. So definitely something that you like to see. And we want to keep it going into this week. So my first sleeper pick is Kyren Williams of more than 94.5 rushing yards. I don't think that there has been a better running back as far as a pure runner not named Christian McCaffrey than Kyren Williams this year. Actually, from a fantasy point per game standpoint, he's second only to McCaffrey, and that's really due in large part to how effective he is at running the ball. He's got 5.1 yards per carry, 1,057 rushing yards on the season, and since returning from injury in week 11, he's hit this mark in 4 out of 5 games. The Giants defense has also allowed 134 rushing yards per game. So with Williams' workload, I think he should be able to hit even this lofty mark. So I'm going more than 94.5 rushing yards for Kyren Williams. Next up, I'm just going to keep going here with Ezekiel Elliott. I'm going to go more than 28.5 receiving yards. We talked a little bit earlier about Zeke and how much he's been incorporated into the passing game. But I love his chances this week against the Bills that have allowed 5.4 receptions and receptions per game to the running back, and Zeke averaging 6.2 yards per reception. I love him to hit this mark. He's also hit this mark in 3 out of the last 4 games. And if the Patriots are playing from behind, which I expect that they will be, I expect him to do it again. So that is Zeke Elliott, more than 28.5 receiving yards. Next up, keep hitting on what works, right? Derek Carr, more than 240.5 passing yards. Tampa Bay's defense hasn't been able to stop opposing quarterbacks, allowing 264 passing yards per game. Carr is coming off a 300-plus yard performance, and we talked about it earlier. With the Saints fighting for a playoff spot, I think that he's really going to come out slinging. And between Olave and Shaheed, they're going to be hard to slow down, especially downfield. And if Carlton Davis is out yet again, I like the chances here even more. Next, I'm going with Rashee Rice, more than 63.5 receiving yards. He's hit this mark in 4 out of the last 5 games that he's played, and he's really emerged as the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. The Bengals secondary has been very exploitable all year long, allowing the most passing yards per attempt. And with Mahomes and everyone else in this offense trying to get right, I think that Rice shows up and makes a statement. Finally, I'm going to go with Easton Stick, less than 210.5 passing yards. Now, Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer still aren't practicing, and if they're unable to go, this is going to be a long day for Mr. Stick. Denver is allowing 233 passing yards per game, but if Stick is missing his top 2 receivers, I think that number goes way, way down. I know that 210 seems low, but are we really counting on Quentin Johnston to actually catch the balls that are thrown his way? I'm not. I don't think that he's going to get there. So again, that's Easton Stick, less than 210.5 passing yards. If you play all these together, it's at a 17.17 times multiplier. And that wraps up our sleeper picks of the day. Again, to sign up, go to fantasyalarm.com/sleeper, use promo code VAULT3, and first-time users get a 100% deposit match up to $100. So we see Coop there in the chat. We've got to hit our bold predictions and then go ahead and skedaddle because we flip times. I don't have the extra time. We got to get ready for his show. Make sure that you guys stay tuned to our Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel and tune into Coop's show. But until then, let's jump into some bold predictions and finish week 17 off strong. I think, for one, that Nico Collins is going to be the wide receiver 1 this week against the Tennessee Titans. Now, he gets CJ Stroud back this week, which always helps, but against the Titans, I think that it's even better. They rank 31st in DVOA against the wide receiver 1, and in a game that the Texans have to win, I think that they really do pull out all the stops. The matchup that he gets against Trey Avery is just really too good to pass up. I really, really like Nico Collins this week going up against the Titans. Next, I think, and Coop's going to want to tune in and hear this, I think that the Patriots beat the Bills by 3 points in a big spoiler. Now, this could be the final time that Bill Belichick faces off against the Bills as the Patriots head coach if Robert Kraft wants to clean house at the end of the season. And I think that he comes in true Belichickian fashion and just plays spoiler to the Bills. The Patriots did just go into Mile High Stadium and defeat the Broncos, while the Bills struggled and nearly dropped the ball against the Chargers. So the Patriots are playing with much more confidence since Bailey Zappi has taken over at quarterback, and I think that this continues this week. So be on upset alert. Next up, I think that Kenneth Gainwell outscores DeAndre Swift against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this is purely a game script thing because I do think DeAndre Swift gets his as well. Jalen Hurts is going to get his. But I think that Gainwell comes into the game, and by the time he comes in, that win is well in hand. Now, with the game well in hand, they're not going to risk trying to get Hurts injured or risk injuring DeAndre Swift. I think that Gainwell ends up finding the end zone along with plenty of garbage time rushing and ends up outscoring DeAndre Swift. Next up, I think that the Carolina Panthers could beat the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road. Now, these Panthers have shown some moxie over the past few weeks. They took down the Falcons. They almost took down the Panthers last week. And I think with Trevor Lawrence banged up and Bryce Young's confidence getting going, that they make a stand and sneak past the Jaguars and play spoiler in the process. Finally, I'm just going to stick with the Saints and Mike Evans. I think that Mike Evans finally dominates the Saints with a multi-touchdown game. We've heard over and over and over about how Mike Evans can't succeed against the Saints, but there's a very important part of that narrative that's absent from this game, and that is Marshawn Lattimore. And I wrote in my notes, ding dong, the witch is dead, and all that, but it's a clear path for Mike Evans to dominate this game. The Saints really don't have anyone that they can cover Evans without Lattimore, and as hot as the Bucs have been recently, I love his chances to dominate this week. If you've got your bold predictions, please make sure to tweet them at me. I love hearing them and going over them the next week. Let's close out week 17 with a bang. And speaking of closing out, it's time to go. Time flies when we're having fun, right? So thank you guys so much for jumping in the chat, asking me your questions. Make sure to tune in on Sunday morning if you have more start sets starting at 9 a.m. Eastern with myself and John and Pemba, then Howard Bender and Andrew Cooper on Sirius XM from 10 to 11, and then Coop and John and Pemba right back here from 10 or from 11 to 12. Excuse me. Let's get this championship, guys. If you haven't yet, make sure to download the BetterCast app, jump in there. Make sure to go to fantasyalarm.com/win and use promo code Let's Go for 50% off of your first month. Because although football is ending, we are getting close to baseball season and we never sleep around here. So the content just keeps going. Coming up next, as I mentioned, we've got Coop's Fantasy Fiasco. So stay tuned for that if you're on the page. Later this afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m., we've got the Better Sports Betting Show with Dan Servadidio and Howard Bender, followed from 5 to 6 p.m. with the NBA DFS Live with John and Pemba and James Grande. So thank you so much for sticking with me this season, for always tuning in. We'll have another show on Monday, recapping this weekend, of course, probably lots of fantasy therapy, depending on whether or not you won or lost. So make sure to tune in for that. Until then, good luck on your matchups. Thank you so much to my producer Tony. Have a great weekend, and thanks for getting blitzed.